chalice lighted? I think you can see the light of this.
This meeting is being recorded.
I think you can see the light of this chalice. And wait until I get this. And our chalice is lighted today for being together as a group from around the world. The chalice is lighted for all we can do to listen and learn from each other and to help each other as well. And the chalice is lighted for the spirituality, the spiritual sense that we can receive from being together as global sisters and brothers, supporting and learning from all. So, it's good to be back in September. It's good to be back with the whole group. And we will take the time this morning to go around and popcorn style, please say your names and where you are calling from. I am visually challenged, and so it is really good for me and perhaps others of you to hear the names and not just be able to read them on your Zoom boxes. So I really do appreciate this moment of hearing who you are and where you are calling from. And I am Reverend Carol Houston, and I am calling from New York City.
I'm Jerry Kennedy, calling from Seattle, Washington.
I'm Jeannie Lewis, calling from the San Marcos UU Fellowship here in San Marcos, Texas.
Vicki Roberts Gassler, calling from Everett, Washington, just north of Seattle.
Kathy Wheeler, College Station, Texas.
Jackie Russell, New Braunfels, Texas.
Laura Stunky, calling from Central France.
Lee Boki-Burt, calling from Chelsea, Michigan.
Tina Husing, calling from Montclair, just outside of New York.
Ruth Gibson, calling from Chapel Hill, North Carolina.
Jay Ramsey, calling from Hercules, California, which is near Berkeley, East Bay, San Francisco area.
Javine Hertz from near Copenhagen, Denmark.
Phyllis Field on stolen Piscataway land, now called Baltimore, Maryland.
And Phyllis Marsh from just outside the Washington Beltway in Bowie, Maryland.
Elaine McCarthy, calling from Paris, France.
Oh, good.
Claudia Elferding, calling from Silver City, New Mexico.
Raina Minger from Ann Arbor, Michigan.
I'm from
Beth O'Connell from Bradley Beach, New Jersey.
I'm Vicki Mildy from Appleton, Wisconsin.
I'm Barbara Ginhardt from Boston, Massachusetts.
Denise Tracy, outside of Chicago, Illinois.
My name is Gudrun Hahn. I'm from Germany. At the moment, I'm sitting in Timișoara in Romania, and I'm a member of ICUUW.
Mary Geisman from New York City.
Anyone else? Good to see all you here. If you are new to this gathering, if you're new to the Tuesday gathering, please put your email address into the chat so that we can make sure that you are on that particular list for us. This morning, we're going to take the time to talk about the advocacy work that some of us did in this past summer. We have a substantial committee, and I invite everyone to join it as well. We meet monthly, and this committee is focused on United Nations advocacy. And we have, since 2018, had delegations attending either virtually or in person the Commission on the Status of Women in March. But this year, for the first time, we also had a delegation of a half dozen attending something called the High Level Political Forum, which happens each year in July. The High Level Political Forum is smaller than the gathering of the women in March. This year, 7,800 people attended the Commission on the Status of Women. Only 2,700 attended the High Level Political Forum. It's easier to meet people, to see people, even to meet the delegations from countries. The focus of the High Level Political Forum is to look at the progress being made on the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals. There were 17 goals put together and signed into action in 2015. And these goals outline how the world can become developed, with nations that have not been developed being more equitable with developed nations, and how we can do it in a sustainable fashion. This year's High Level Political Forum focused on goals related to water and sanitation, to energy, to sustainable cities. And it was filled with wonderful plenary meetings and events in which the progress reports were made. How are we doing on the goals? We're not there, we're not even close, but the progress is reported and discussed, and questions are asked. And there's also the opportunity for some countries to do specific reports on how the individual countries are doing. These reports are voluntary. It was wonderful being together there. It was wonderful finding ways to talk to other women from other parts of the world, to work with major groups on drafting questions, and even to cross paths with members of the U.S. delegation, which we never do in the Commission on the Status of Women. Our delegation, our youth delegation, made several statements at various times. And it was interesting for us to hear in the course of those statements that they were talking about the need to recognize the inherent dignity of people from around the world. Is there a Unitarian Universalist around that delegation that is helping to phrase this spiritual sense that our delegation brought? And two of the delegation members I actually had the opportunity to speak with briefly and thank them for seeing the spiritual side of being together in the world and finding a better way to global citizenship and mutual support. That's all I'm going to say. There will be time for questions after people have spoken. You will hear from 4 other people who attended the meeting as well in person. I am sending it over to Lee Boki-Burke. She will introduce herself and then pass it on to the next member of the delegation. So Lee, please go ahead.
Hi, I'm Lee Boki-Burke, and I'm a member of the Ann Arbor UU congregation. This was my first time at the UN, so I was a complete newbie, and I can tell you it's easy to be overwhelmed. There's so much going on. What is a VNR? It took me days to figure that out. The HLPF, it's like a different language, and so it was very comforting to know that every morning our little group would gather with the women's major group which we are a part of, to start the day off. And this group of young women from India and Turkey and the Philippines and several other places did a masterful job of helping to get us focused on what were what was going on that day that might have special focus on women's issues and some of the positivity there. Every day they would give us a different color scarf, and it would be associated with a different demand that the women of the world would like the rest of the world to wake up to, as far as the needs of the women and children, the environmental issues, and how the degradation of our environment affects women more strongly than others. It was, I felt, really a warm way. We were across the street, then we would go, in addition to our little scarves, people would talk what was going on, and then they would have a little cheer. Off we'd go to try to decide what we wanted to learn that day, and it was overwhelming. There was a big emphasis on youth, and they had some very impressive young people who mentioned that they were the people with the lived experience. They were the people who had the real urgency. They were the people who were going to be around for this planet. And it's very important that we get things going right. I was amazed how many people were not from the United States there. There were a lot of countries where the Sustainable Development Goals were part of a regular dialogue, but here, even though they seem very important, if we could get the word out, there were very few people. In fact, we were one of two groups in the women's major group that were here, and the other one was some liberal Catholics who were here at the women's major group. There were a lot of side effects. One of the most important was one on effective partnerships at all levels, and how important it is for civil society to work with governments, to hold the governments accountable, to work with them before they went to a conference where they would actually be voting or decision making, needing to gather good data, to look at taxation policies, to have binding agreements, working at the grass level as well as higher up. It's very important. I also especially really liked this side event taking place at the Spanish embassy, in which the people from Spain were very proud about how far they had come in understanding that women have issues related to their menstruation. Sometimes it can be some people are very sick. Some people have to leave school in different countries for up to a week because they can't be allowed to be in school when they have menstruation. They don't have products. They don't have understanding. They're dealt with in very unfortunate and demeaning ways. And how Spain felt that they were the first in the whole world to have a national policy of giving women paid leave off when they had menstruation difficulties. I have pages and pages. The amount of information, fantastic. Sometimes it's just hard to decide where we're going to go from there, but Heino will take over now.
Hi, thank you. I just like Lee, this was the first time that I participated. Actually, at her request, I went with her. I was really just hoping to observe, learn as much as I can, and see where we can have any kind of impact. And what I was asked to talk about, that one of the young ladies that we met at the women's major gathering every morning was a representative of a civil society called Filia from Romania, who was very, very effective, informed, and she prepared their shadow report, which was given after the official country report at the UN. And she arranged a meeting at the Romanian embassy where she was going to present some of their concerns and issues related to women's rights and women issues in Romania. We were just going as observers and participated with our scarves and to be more in numbers and to have our presence. But I think it was extremely effective that we were there, and also we're able to ask questions and also encourage them. I cannot tell you exactly the person's name that we met at the embassy, but it was a young lady who was in charge with human rights relations or something like that. And she was very much attentive to her presentation. And we had a very, very good discussion about how far Romania has come after the Ceausescu era difficulties, because you all know about the orphanages and abortion issues. And there was even contraceptives were not allowed when I was living in Romania. And of course, there's a lot of needs, and the presentation was wonderful. And she outlined what the most needed support they would need from the government. One of them was to make abortion not only available on paper, but making it available by having pricing and availability and such, and data collection, because without data, you really can't have a meaningful report or follow-up if you don't know exactly what's happening. Monitoring of the domestic abusers, teen pregnancy, which is very high in Romania. So all of these issues that Andrea presented to the embassy, I felt like it was heard. She was taking notes and was asking specific questions about how could they collaborate better for in the future. So I feel like that was a really good opportunity for us to be there as women from United States. And I spoke to the representative as well, telling her about how important it would be that Romania would change their image that was prominent for so many years. I think that's all I had my little portion of what I should be talking about. And maybe at the end, if it's not going to be covered, then I would put a couple of more sentences in. And with this, I will hand over the baton to Tina, who's going to follow the presentation.
Well, thank you, Heinal. I have prepared a few slides for us that I would like to show. So here we go. What you are getting is my perspective, right? We heard from Lee, we heard from Heinal, bits and pieces of what stuck with me during those 2 weeks. It was always interesting to hear from women, from other women, and other women's perspective. And I think that I was mainly interested really in women and business because of my background. But for example, just something like, Mary Maker, a young Sudanese refugee who says, "Stop measuring my misery, help with my liberation." This call to action, I think, reverberated through many of the things that we heard and saw that I heard and saw while I was there. I was struck, just as Carol said at the during her opening remarks, to hear the United States echo some of the values that we ICUUW hold so close. And I was particularly struck when a representative of the United States during the opening session spoke to something that's really close to us. So I'd like to share with you just a tiny little clip of this representative representing the United States during the opening of the high-level political forum.
Madam President, we note foundational to the 2030 agenda and a key accelerator to achieving all of the SDGs. We cannot advance development without women's and girls in all their diversity, their leadership, their full, equal, and meaningful participation and realization of their human rights. The bottom line is...
So what? That I had not expected that, I have to be honest, right? So that was really nice. We need to achieve gender equality. It is foundational to the 2030 agenda, which of course is by when we want to have achieved all of our 17 Sustainable Development Goals. And we cannot advance without women and girls and all their diversity, their leadership. That also means women and girls, including everyone who declares themselves a woman or a girl. In general, there were a lot of references to women. So, for example, I didn't know, I guess, that in the parliaments worldwide, 75% are men. At the peace tables, 87% are men. Managers in companies, 73% are men. And in climate change negotiations, 67% are men. So we don't have enough women at the table. And we heard more than once that if we go as slowly as we have been going, it'll be another 300 years until we achieve gender equality. But in addition, you know, other things were mentioned. 300 years to end child marriage, 286 years to close the gap in legal protection and to remove discriminatory laws. 140 years to achieve equal representation in leadership in the workplace. So a lot of work to do, and basically always, again, emphasizing we need to do more, we need to do it faster, you know, we need to get back on track after the after COVID derailed us. Carol mentioned that that the high-level political forum is a lot smaller. In a way, you could say it's more dense, right? I mean, CSW, the Commission on the Status of Women, you have so many activities and so many things going on. Here it's more concentrated, but still, there's a lot going on with the voluntary national reviews being one of the center, where the countries volunteer to give a report on what progress they have made in their country, achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. And we had 38 countries and the European Union do that. We also had lots of special events that related to the voluntary national reviews, and we had the voluntary national review labs. And so these are three things that I want to briefly highlight, even though you can see there's lots of other things. There were lots of other things. And yes, it was always a challenge to decide what exactly we wanted to do. Now, I think one of the things that really struck me was that there's so much work going into those 9 days. So many organizations, countries, states, but all stakeholders, all major groups, all NGOs, civil society, everybody puts a lot of effort into what sometimes is only like a 2-minute statement. Right? But there's a lot going on beforehand. So of the 39 presenters this year, let me just highlight a few. Chile, because Chile already presented for the 3rd time. So they really use this to have a dialogue with others. We had the European Union for the third time. We had Romania, and Heinal referenced Romania, and of course Romania is close to our heart, and a bunch of others, as you can see here on my slide. And noticeably missing are the United States. They have never done a voluntary national review. So maybe that is something that we could be pushing for, right? They are one of the few. How do these national reviews work? Well, as I said, the states put a lot of effort into this, and they talk about how they go about doing a national review, how they go about trying to present a scorecard on where they are against the Sustainable Development Goals. Here's an example. So we have a session. It's scheduled for 2 hours. We have 4 countries, in this case, Bosnia-Herzegovina, Liechtenstein, Comoros, and Zambia. They each have about 10 minutes. They give a presentation. Many of them include a video. And then member states and other participants have 2 minutes to ask questions or make comments. And some of the comments, just to give you a feeling for the comments, Singapore asked Liechtenstein, what's the role of the private actors domestically and abroad? Tanzania asked Zambia, can you give us some examples of how you are working with your different stakeholders? Switzerland asked Bosnia-Herzegovina, you have a very complicated structure in your country. How do you do vertical coordination and cooperation? Can you give us some recommendations? Saudi Arabia asked the Comoros to explain their public-private platform and how it helps them accelerate the implementation. So I walked away from these VNRs really impressed because they were very dense. Like I say, the whole high-level political forum to me was very dense, but they did facilitate a sharing of experience, successes, challenges, and lessons. It was really worthwhile to see countries engaged like this or states engaged like this. In addition, we had 16 VNR labs, and these labs were really highlighting the role of civil society, and we're digging deeper into how do we do what we do. And on my slide, you can see some of the topics, just again, to give you a flavor, right? Like what are the, what do we do? How do we integrate volunteers, right? How do we deal with with many crises going on at the same time? How do we bridge the gaps and forge partnerships? How do we collaborate better? How do we look at the whole of government and the whole of society? How do we make sure nobody is left behind as we gather our reports? So lots of different things. In addition, there were those side events, and there were special. Carol? Okay. Carol, you're on mute. Yes?
Yeah, just concerned about time, but if you would.
Yes, wrapping it up. Okay. Last one, right? Because there were 3. There were the VNRs, the labs, and then there were also the workshops. So this is the third part, which is a workshop. And I just wanted to give you an example. Carol mentioned sustainable cities. And so sustainable cities was one of the workshops that I attended. And it was really interesting because there was an organization called Women in Informal Employment, globalizing and organizing, together with other NGOs, highlighting a project that they did in Montevideo, Uruguay, how they went about deciding a plan and implementing a plan, highlighting public spaces. And they went to women in informal employment. They recognized that there are so-called natural markets, and they went and met the women where the women were. So really a nice example of working with an NGO and using the feet on the ground to develop good, solid planning for the country. With that,
and getting to the grassroots as well. Yeah.
Sorry?
It's good. getting to the grassroots. I would just say that. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. So with that, I would like to turn it over to Carmen, who is going to tell us a little bit about what's next.
Is she here?
I saw her earlier, so.
Yes, she is. Carmen, can you do your presentation? Maybe even put up your video so we can all see you.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
So,
that's Carmen, please. And we'll have some questions. Go ahead.
Yeah, my connection is not very good, but I'm going to speak about the next. Well, first, I'm really happy that you guys had a chance to participate on the high-level political forum. For those who are kind of like new and that I don't know, I participated in the drafting of the SDG agenda before in a process that was called post-2015. That was with the evaluations and the lessons learned from the MDGs. What would the takeouts be in order to work on a new agenda, a new global agenda that takes into account not only developing countries, but acknowledging that development until now has a number of implications. And within those implications, we have basically a number of inequality issues that we have to solve in order to create a more equitable world. So that's why I think it's important that we get involved in this kind of like processes, because I coming from a developing country, I understand many of the gaps that we have. So this is, we are in 2023. We are like in the middle of the Agenda 2030. The Agenda 2030 goes from 2015 to 2030. So we are like in the middle, and it is time to kind of like evaluate what has been going on and if we have achieved what we expected from this agenda. And unfortunately, we are around, we have achieved around 18% of this agenda, which is really sad compared to the needs of the countries, because this agenda is focused on, for the South, to achieve developments, to have it has to be a policy roadmap to achieve policies on water, on energy, on food, on health, on those kinds of issues. And for the North, it has to be an agenda that helps you understand and rethink the way that development has been going, and to rethink the privileges that the people in the North have. So it's a very interesting exercise to see all the countries kind of like showing the progress that they have done in a number of areas, and kind of like seeing how this has been shaped. Nevertheless, I find that at this point we have one big problem, which is that many people think that the Agenda 2030 is an action agenda, and it's not an action agenda. What we were able to manage when we were drafting the agenda is to include civil society. Civil society can do actions and has to do actions on the ground, on the SDGs, to contribute to achieving the SDGs. But for governments, the governments have to shape the policies that are going to make this SDGs real achievements. So, but what we're seeing is that governments are focusing on doing actions, but not into policy. And what do I mean between the difference around policies and actions? I'm going to give you an example. For example, electric cars. We are in the transition to electric cars because we know fossil fuels are one of the main problems with climate change. So the actions are that right now we have like 3,000 patents on electric cars around the world. The main known, I think it's Tesla, and we are slowly making that transition. But what's the problem? For example, the chargers that every company and every patent have are different. So we're going to have like the problem that we have right now with our cell phones. You have an Android, you don't have battery, you ask who has a battery charger, and ironically, everybody has an iPhone charger, but not an Android charger. And it happens the same if you have like an iPhone and you run out of battery, everybody has an Android. So if there aren't policies, these chargers are not going to be universal. So we're going to have the same problem to dispose chargers every time a new model comes, and have to change a number of things every time a model comes in order to keep on buying, like the model of the cell phones, the Apple model, for example, which is not based on it's based on obsolescence, pre-established obsolescence. So, and we don't want that to happen with electric cars. That's why we need policies. We need a policy that says we are only going to allow one charger, and that charger is the one that's going to be modified, for example, as well as charging stations. We cannot have like every kind of car have their own charging station. But those are some of the examples why action is good, because we're seeing the action, but we need the policies in order for this action to be really sustainable and not keep on feeding the system that is still moved by offer and demand. As soon as you need something, you create a new demand. So at what stage we are right now, we need those policies, especially in the South. And for me, it's like frustrated to see that governments in the South are not taking this seriously enough to implement these policies back home. So that is one of the jobs that we have to do with the different governments. The other thing is that right now, well, next week we have the SDG summit, which is going to be in UN. It's 2 days, and basically this summit is to kind of like talk about what has been achieved at this midterm. Unfortunately, it's not so open for civil society, which I think it's a pity. There are, I think, 8 speakers from civil society from all around the world for the SDG summit, but it's also like 2 days. So, but if anybody wants to participate, I don't know, there's still, I think, the registration is still open in Indico. I think so, I'm not sure, but we can check. And so it is important to kind of like identify what are the gaps. That's going to be the 18 and the 19. On the 20, we have the High Ambition Climate Change Summit, also in UN. But for that one, we have no idea how civil society is going to be able to participate, if it's going to be open or not. But that's why what we have as civil society is the People's Assembly, which will take place on the 16 and 18 of September. It's going to be in the Church Center, which is in front of UN. And that is the place where, as civil society, we kind of like talk about the solutions, the alternatives, talk about ways to advocate for certain issues. We gather to kind of like consolidate agendas. We're going to have like what's it called? statement, a declaration that we're going to share it with the different parties. So this is going to take place like next weekend. So anybody that is in New York and can contribute will be great. It's only 2 days. And then the next Sunday, there is the march, the march against fossil fuels, which is going to be very very important to kind of like mobilize not only people around the world, but people in New York, in the US, around an issue which is fossil fuels. So we hope that also that march is going to be successful. I believe that Friday for the Future, which is Greta Thunberg organization, is the one that is leading this march. I don't think she's in New York or that she will come. But anyway, they have like a huge list of great speakers and music and things. And I'm also not sure if the other congregations of UU are going to participate. Pretty sure they will. But yeah, those are some of the updates, and I'm happy to answer any question. Thank you.
Yeah, and we can send out a list of those ideas and contacts as well. We will do that later this week to people who are interested. We want to go into breakout groups briefly, not as long as usual, but we will do that. But are there any burning questions either in the chat, or if anyone wants to unmute for a quick question? We can have 1 or 2 questions and then go into breakout for just a few minutes. Any questions? I cannot read the chat, so if others can see the chat and pick up questions, that would be good.
Yes. Ellen says that it is not just Greta. I totally agree. I just meant that one of the leading organizations is Fridays for the Future, not the main one. But yeah, you're totally right. This is not about Greta at all. But yes, it's important. I don't know if we have if we want to kind of like join symbolically the march by signing in and sending the logo and all those things.
Yes, I should point out that a lot of this, there are virtual pathways to a lot of things, including UN Web TV. You can watch many sessions that will be happening in a few weeks on UN Web TV. Just Google that, and you can get into the UN through that means very, very much. All right, I want to send out to breakout groups only for, let's say, 8 minutes. The questions that we suggested are about how to be global citizens. How are you active as a global citizen in small ways or larger ways? And maybe you are not as much as you think you can be, but how can you as an individual, as a member of what we call a civil society group, and I is a civil society group, how can we be responsible global citizens, and how can we as global citizens help to make the world a better place for everyone in all countries, all people, with the inherent dignity of being individuals. Can you send us into groups, and just every 8 minutes, there will be no official group. You're
No official report.
Group, but come back afterwards. Come back afterwards, and if anyone has anything to share, momentarily. So.
Okay, so I'm opening up the breakout group. So 8 minutes, and I will probably give a 1 minute warning before the breakout groups close. So you should have received an invitation to join a small breakout group. So, Carol, I think we're all back.
This meeting is being recorded.
Good. I've got 5 minutes. Yes, we need official report backs today. I'm sorry there was so little time. Some of you were able to sort of go through some things. I was in there, and the decision was made to put out statements and get you to sign on to them. I think we can do more of that.
Carol, you're breaking up. You're breaking up, Carol. I don't think we understood. I don't think we understood. Are you trying to ask anyone if they had any just pertinent observations? Or because you were breaking up.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm anyone want to say what I would ask? Yeah.
I do not see anyone raising hands or, okay, Julie would like to say a few words.
Yeah, I think the most pertinent observation that was coming up out of our group was a follow-up to what Audrey said earlier about the lack of the UU presence at the Parliament of the World's Religions, and how IWC is stepping into the breach. And in fact, the UN, this report of our activity at the UN is in another indication of that, or a salient indication of that.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Julie. And Ellen would like to add something. Ellen, go ahead, please.
Yes, the main thing we focused on in my group, because of the tremendous excitement of two people who were at the high-level forum, was the idea of solar cookers and solar lights given to local women when they came to the health clinic to deliver their babies. You know, combining needed health care, which is rare, and giving that extra time in the day and not having to kill trees to breathe smoke to cook your family's food. There's so many benefits simply by affording a solar light, and preferably, or also a solar cooker if possible. Tremendous project, very important, very exciting. And that's so much of what you get at the UN is fabulous local projects.
Ellen, where was that?
That's a good question. I don't think the nation was ever given. It was, Heinel, wasn't it a Connecticut woman who was running the project? Yes, but what was the nation?
Yes, there is an organization which we don't have the name handy. We would find it someplace, and they are involved with the solar lights on the grounds. And then there were other constant mentioning. I mean, this was the green cooking was something that it was constantly mentioned in so many ways. And that's what I was thinking, that if we have these little organizations on the ground providing the green cooking setup for women, what an impact would be that for clean energy and women's empowerment and health benefits for the women and the children who are sometimes burning dung to cook their meals.
Okay, Beth, you have wanted to add something?
Yeah. Okay. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. I was just pointing out in our group that IWC aligns with the women's major group at these conferences, because what the women's major group does at these conferences is they remind the UN of the gender dimension of any social problem, any issue that they're discussing. There is the gender dimension. Women are disproportionately affected by poverty, by economic, by climate change, you name it. Women are and children are disproportionately affected. So part of our mission when we're advocating at the UN is to remind the policymakers of the gender dimension in all these issues. And I'm going to the SDG this weekend, the SDG summit.
Good, good. It is vitally important for women to be at the UN. And you look around and it's mostly men speaking and doing things, but women are there and women are speaking and we can be part of that. So. Anything else? Are you hearing all right, Sophie, with my camera off?
Yeah.
In addition to the scarves, every day we would pass out a demand for the day. I don't know if you can read that if it's backwards, but just really kind of keep people focused on what we felt were really important issues. Because everything is interconnected.
Yeah, so I mean,
Absolutely.
I could maybe report from my group. We said that, yes, I mean, these are global issues and need to be addressed globally, but action and policy change is always from the ground up, right? So we need to have our feet on the ground and we need to act locally. And so in the United States, that would probably mean within our own state. That's where the focus needs to be.
And the U.S. government. I mean, we need to speak to them, and we're working on that. We're going to work on that. We're at a little over an hour, which is our gathering time. We will meet again in 2 weeks. There will be a different topic then, and you will hear more about it on your email. We will send around some things that scheduling for
Carol, you either broke up or you have you finished?
Oh, I thought I was. Were you hearing me? Were you hearing me?
Partly we were hearing you. So go ahead again.
Okay. All right. Okay. I am going to. You're not going to see this, but I am blowing out the chalice. I am extinguishing the chalice. We carry it with us as we go, and we will be together in another 2 weeks. Although any of you who want to be around the UN in the next few days, we'll send you information about how you can do that as well. And so, if there's nothing else, I will bid you goodbye for the day. And thank you all. Thanks to the speakers for putting into words what was an important and powerful experience for us. And invite all of you to think about coming to the UN at some point in the years to come. So thank you all. Take care.
Thank you. Have a nice day.
Thank
Thank
you.
you
Bye-bye.
to all the
Thank you.
speakers.